Ambassador walked through the massive halls of the Galactic Council station. The walls were made of crystal that changed colors as different alien species passed by. She had seen this place many times before, but today felt different. Today was the Centennial Review, where all the treaties between the 847 species would be discussed and renewed. Wore her simple blue uniform with the Earth symbol on her shoulder. Around her, other ambassadors wore fancy robes covered in jewels, flowing garments that seemed to move on their own, and armor that gleamed like starlight. She looked plain compared to them, and she knew they thought so too. The main assembly hall was enormous. It could hold representatives from nearly 1,000 different worlds. Found her assigned seat at the back corner in the section marked for junior members. Even after 200 years of membership, humanity still sat in the cheap seats. High Counselor called the meeting to order. He was a tall, thin creature with 6 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. His voice boomed through the hall without any microphone. "Welcome, representatives of the great civilizations of our galaxy," began. "Today we review the treaties that have kept peace for 100 years. Listened as different species gave reports. The Trade Consortium talked about their massive profits from mining operations. The Hegemonic Alliance bragged about their powerful war fleets. The Mining Guild showed holographic displays of their extraction technology. When it came time for Earth's report, stood up and began to speak. The human colonies have maintained peaceful relations with all neighboring systems. Our trade agreements have been honored, and we continue to provide agricultural support to 17 different." Yes, interrupted Counselor from the Hegemonic Alliance. "The humans and their little farms, how quaint." Laughter rippled through the assembly hall. Felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her expression calm. "If I may continue," said, raising her voice slightly. "Actually," said, holding up one of his 6 hands, "perhaps we should move on to more pressing matters. The floor recognizes Trade Minister from the Consortium." Was a large, purple creature with tentacles instead of arms. He floated above his chair using some kind of gravity device. "Thank you, High Counselor. I wish to address a growing concern about certain underperforming members of this council." Sat back down, knowing what was coming. This happened every few decades. Some powerful species would decide that humanity was not worth keeping around. "The human species has contributed little to galactic civilization," continued. "Their technology is primitive, their military is weak, their culture is backward. They occupy 12 star systems but produce nothing of real value except food and basic minerals." More laughter from the assembly. Noticed that not everyone was laughing. Some of the smaller species looked uncomfortable. But the powerful ones, the ones who made the real decisions, were nodding in agreement. "I propose," said with a dramatic flourish of his tentacles, "that we reconsider humanity's status in this council. Perhaps they would be better served as a protectorate under the guidance of more advanced civilizations." The word protectorate was just a fancy way of saying slave species. His hands tightened into fists under the table. Counselor Aura from the Crystal Syndicate rose next. She looked like a living diamond that had been carved into the shape of a person. "I second this proposal," her voice chimed like breaking glass. "The humans have been freeloading for 2 centuries. Their so-called colonies are tiny settlements that contribute nothing to galactic trade or defense." Stood up again. "I request permission to respond to these accusations." "Granted," said with obvious reluctance. "Humanity has honored every treaty we have signed," said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "We have provided agricultural assistance to dozens of worlds facing food shortages. Our merchant vessels have helped establish trade routes in previously unexplored regions. Our diplomatic corps has mediated over 300 border disputes." "Minor contributions," scoffed General X from the Hegemonic Alliance. He was a massive creature covered in red scales and sharp spikes. "Any species can grow food and play peacemaker. What matters is strength. What matters is the ability to defend oneself and contribute to galactic security. Your entire military consists of a few dozen outdated patrol ships." "Yeah," called out someone from the back. "Where are your dreadnoughts? Where are your planet killers?" The hall erupted in more laughter, waited for it to die down before speaking again. "We have always believed that strength comes from cooperation, not intimidation," she said. "How noble," said with obvious sarcasm. "But nobility doesn't win wars or protect trade routes from pirates. I call for a formal vote on the proposal to reduce humanity's status to that of a protectorate. Felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was really happening. After 200 years of peaceful membership, they were actually going to do this. The voting began. Species after species cast their votes in favor of reducing humanity's status. Watched the numbers climb. 100 votes in favor, 200, 400, 500. A few smaller species voted against the proposal, but they were vastly outnumbered. When the final vote was tallied, the result was overwhelming. 784 votes in favor, 63 against. Smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The motion passes. Effective immediately, the human species will be granted protectorate status under the joint supervision of the Trade Consortium and the Hegemonic Alliance. Your voting rights are hereby revoked, and your territories will be administered by your new supervisors. Stood slowly. The hall had gone quiet, waiting to see how the humans would react to their humiliation. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like an ordinary communication pad, but thumb hovered over a specific button that very few people in the galaxy had ever seen. "I have a message for the Council," said. Her voice was calm, but something in her tone made the laughter stop completely. "Terra formally withdraws from all treaties with the Galactic Council, effective immediately," she said. "All defense pacts, trade agreements, mutual aid treaties, and diplomatic accords are hereby null and void." "You cannot simply withdraw," sputtered. "There are procedures, legal requirements." "We are no longer bound by your procedures," said. She pressed the button on her device. Somewhere in the depths of space, signals began traveling to human ships and stations that officially did not exist. "You will understand why very soon," said. Then she smiled, and for the first time since the meeting began, she looked genuinely happy. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the assembly hall erupted in confused chatter. Nobody tried to stop her. After all, what could one primitive human do against the combined might of 846 advanced civilizations? They were about to find out. 3 hours after left the council chamber, the first problems began. Trade Minister was in his luxury quarters aboard the council station when his assistant burst in. The assistant was a small, nervous creature with too many eyes. "Minister," the assistant squeaked, "we have a problem with the mining operations." Was enjoying a drink made from fermented. He didn't bother looking up from his data pad. What kind of problem? Did the humans file some sort of complaint before they stormed off? "No, sir," the assistant said. "The quantum drill systems have stopped working, all of them, across 67 mining worlds." Now looked up. "That's impossible. Those drills are the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "Yes, sir, but they're not working. The technicians say the core programming has somehow been locked out. They can't access any of the control systems." Set down his drink. The quantum drills were the foundation of his consortium's wealth. They could extract rare minerals from deep within planets without damaging the surface. No other species had this technology. "Get me chief engineer and immediately," ordered. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Admiral, or of the Hegemonic Alliance, was receiving his own bad news. The Admiral looked like a cross between a shark and a rhino, with gray skin covered in thick armor plates. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're getting strange signals from the hyperspace relay network." "What kind of signals?" Admiral Orr growled. "The relays are shutting down, sir, starting from the outer rim and moving inward. Ships are being forced to drop out of hyperspace and use slower-than-light engines." Admiral Orr stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. The hyperspace relay network allowed ships to travel between star systems in days instead of years. Without it, galactic civilization would grind to a halt. "Who's shutting them down?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir. The relay stations are simply going dark. No distress signals, no explanations, they just stop working." Across the station, similar conversations were happening in dozens of different quarters. The Medical Alliance discovered that their molecular assemblers had stopped producing medicine. The Crystal Syndicate found that their data storage networks were becoming corrupted. The Aquatic Federation's underwater colonies lost life support systems. And in every case, the problems seemed to have started exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes after the human ambassador left the council chamber. High Counselor called an emergency meeting. The main assembly hall was only half full because many representatives were dealing with crises on their home worlds. "What is the meaning of these technical failures?" demanded. "Our scientists assure us that simultaneous breakdowns across multiple star systems are mathematically impossible." Trade Minister looked sick. His purple skin had turned an unhealthy gray color. "My engineers have discovered something disturbing," he said. "The quantum drill technology that we purchased from the Science Institute 50 years ago, it appears to have been designed by humans." The hall erupted in shocked voices. Counselor Aura's crystal body flashed angry red colors. "That's impossible. Humans don't have the technology to create quantum drills." "The design signatures are hidden deep in the code," continued. "So deep that we never noticed them, but they're there. Mathematical patterns that match human thinking styles, even some comments written in human languages." Admiral Orr stepped forward. His face was a mask of rage and confusion. "The hyperspace relay stations have similar hidden signatures. We're investigating all of our technology now." Doctor from the Medical Alliance raised a trembling hand. She was a delicate, insect-like creature with transparent wings. "Our molecular assemblers also show human design elements. But how is this possible? We developed that technology ourselves over the course of centuries." "Did you?" asked a new voice from the back of the hall. Everyone turned to see Admiral Sarah walking down the center aisle. She was human, wearing a black uniform that nobody had ever seen before. Two guards tried to stop her, but she showed them some kind of identification that made them immediately step aside. "Admiral," said with surprise, "I was not aware that humanity had military officers of such high rank." "There are many things you weren't aware of," Admiral said calmly. She walked to the center of the hall and activated a holographic projector. The hologram showed a star map of the galaxy. Human territory was marked in blue 12 small systems in a corner of the galaxy, just like everyone had always known. Then the image changed. New blue dots appeared, hundreds of them, then thousands. The map suddenly showed human presence in every major star system, on every important trade route, around every strategic location in the galaxy. "What is this?" whispered. "This is reality," Admiral said. "What you see is the true extent of human civilization. We have 847 inhabited systems, not 12. We have a fleet of 3,000 warships, not the few dozen patrol boats you've seen. We have been in your space, working alongside you, helping you for over 200 years. The hall was dead silent. Admiral touched another control, and the hologram showed images of human technicians working in alien facilities, human scientists contributing to alien research projects, human diplomats secretly mediating disputes between alien species. "Every major technological breakthrough in the past century has had human involvement," Admiral continued. "Your quantum drills, your hyperspace relays, your medical assemblers, your defensive systems, your communication networks, all of them were designed with human help." "But why?" General X demanded. "Why hide? Why help us in secret?" Admiral smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "Because we learned from our own history. On Earth, we learned that the species that survive aren't the ones who conquer others. They're the ones who make themselves useful, who become indispensable, who help others succeed so that everyone benefits." She gestured to the panicking aliens around her. "For 200 years, humans have been the invisible backbone of galactic civilization. We maintained your technology, mediated your disputes, and made sure everyone had what they needed to thrive." "And now," Counselor Aura asked in her chiming voice. "Now you've made it clear that you don't want our help," Admiral said. "So you won't get it. Every human technician has been recalled. Every human-designed system is being shut down. Every human-mediated treaty is void." She began walking toward the exit. "You wanted to prove that humans were unnecessary. Congratulations, you're about to get your chance." Admiral Orr stepped forward. "Wait, you can't just abandon the galaxy. Billions of lives depend on the systems you're shutting down." Admiral stopped and looked back. "I'm not abandoning anyone. You voted to remove us from the Council. You voted to make us a protectorate. You voted to take away our freedom." She held up her hand as several aliens began to protest. "The technology will keep working for a while, maybe a few months, maybe a year, but without human maintenance and updates it will break down. When it does, you'll have to figure out how to fix it yourselves." "This is blackmail," accused. No, Admiral said quietly. This is consequence. You made your choice. Now you live with it. She walked out of the hall, leaving behind 800 of the galaxy's most powerful beings sitting in stunned silence. Outside, they could hear the sounds of ships launching as human personnel evacuated stations across the galaxy. The golden age of galactic cooperation had lasted exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes after humanity's expulsion from the Council. Now the age of consequence was beginning. Captain had always prided himself on running the most efficient shipping operation in the Andromeda Trade Zone. His cargo vessels moved goods between 40 different star systems, and his routes were the fastest in the galaxy. But today his ships were stuck. Captain, his navigator reported, the jump gate at station isn't responding. We're getting the same message from all the gates on the primary shipping lane. Looked at his star charts. The primary shipping lane was the fastest route between the industrial worlds and the agricultural planets. Without it, his delivery times would triple. Try the secondary routes, he ordered. Already did, sir. Same problem. The gates are just gone like they were never there. Stared out at the stars. His species had been using these trade routes for over a century. They had never failed before. What he didn't know was that every jump gate on every major shipping route had been built and maintained by humans working under false identities. The aliens thought they were buying the technology from each other, but the real designers had been human engineers who had been quietly keeping galactic trade running smoothly for decades. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Ra was having her own crisis. She ran the largest medical research facility in the Alliance, and this morning all of her equipment had stopped working. The molecular assemblers are completely locked out, her assistant reported. We can't produce any medicine at all. Dr. Ra had always been puzzled by how quickly medical technology had advanced in recent decades. Diseases that had plagued her people for centuries suddenly became curable. New treatments appeared that seemed almost too good to be true. Now she was beginning to understand why. She pulled up the design files for the molecular assemblers on her computer. Deep in the code, hidden where only an expert would think to look, she found something that made her blood run cold. Comments written in human language, design patterns that followed human logic, even a tiny signature that read Industries Terran Division. The medicine that had saved millions of lives across the galaxy hadn't been developed by alien scientists. It had been quietly created by human researchers and then given to alien companies to produce. Meanwhile, on the military world of Prime, General Orr was discovering that his proud fleet had a similar problem. Sir, his weapons officer reported, the targeting systems are malfunctioning. We can't lock onto anything. All of them, the general demanded. All of them, sir, every ship in the fleet. General Orr had never questioned where his advanced weapons technology came from. The hegemonic alliance had always claimed to be the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Their ships could target enemy vessels from incredible distances with perfect accuracy. But as his technicians dug deeper into the weapon systems, they found the same hidden signatures. Human designs, human code, human engineering. The most powerful military fleet in the galaxy had been using human technology for 50 years without knowing it. Similar discoveries were being made on hundreds of worlds. The Aquatic Federation's underwater cities were powered by human-designed fusion reactors. The Crystal Syndicate's data networks used human-created quantum encryption. Even the food production systems that fed billions of people relied on human agricultural techniques. But the biggest shock came when Administrator X tried to contact his government on the distant world of Rigel 7. I can't get through, his communications officer reported. The quantum communication array isn't working. X wasn't particularly surprised. Everything else had stopped working today. But when the technicians examined the communication system, they found something impossible. The quantum communication network that connected every major world in the galaxy hadn't been built by any known alien species. The technology was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy's advanced civilizations had ever developed. It had been built by humans, all of it. Every message that had been sent between alien governments for the past 200 years had passed through human-controlled relay stations. The aliens had thought they were communicating directly with each other, but every word had been quietly monitored and routed through human networks. The humans hadn't just been helping galactic civilization, they had been silently running it. On the council station, the emergency sessions continued around the clock. Representatives who had laughed at humanity 12 hours earlier now looked sick with worry. "How far does this go?" High Counselor asked Admiral, who had returned to answer questions. "How far would you like it to go?" Admiral replied calmly. "I want to know the truth, all of it." Admiral activated another holographic display. This one showed the galactic map again, but with new information. Trade routes, communication networks, defensive systems, research facilities, mining operations, agricultural worlds, everything was connected by thin blue lines that represented human involvement. "Your species has been living in a house built by human hands," Admiral said. "The foundation, the walls, the roof, the plumbing, the electrical systems, all of it. You just never bothered to check who the architect was." Trade Minister raised a shaking tentacle. "But why? Why help us and hide it?" "Because that's what humans do," Admiral said. "We solve problems, we fix things, we make life better for everyone around us. It's just how we're built." "And the military technology?" General X demanded. "Our weapons, our shields, our targeting systems." "We gave you the second-best equipment we had," Admiral said. "Good enough to defend yourselves, not good enough to threaten us." She touched another control, and the hologram showed images of human warships. They didn't look like the primitive patrol boats the aliens had seen. These were massive, sleek vessels that bristled with weapons technology that was clearly centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. "This is our real fleet," Admiral said. 3,000 ships, all invisible to your sensors, all capable of destroying entire enemy fleets without taking a scratch. The silence in the hall was deafening. "You've been living under our protection for 200 years, Admiral continued. "Every time pirates threatened your trade routes, human ships quietly eliminated them. Every time two species got close to war, human diplomats found ways to make peace. Every time a plague threatened to wipe out a civilization, human doctors found cures." Counselor Aura's crystal body was flashing rapid, anxious colors. "What do you want from us?" "We don't want anything," Admiral said. "We never did. We helped because it was the right thing to do." "Then why are you stopping now?" Admiral's expression grew cold. "Because you made it clear that you don't want our help. You called us primitive. You called us useless. You voted to take away our freedom and make us your slaves." She stood up and walked toward the exit again. "You can't have it both ways. You can't mock us and depend on us at the same time." "Wait," High Counselor called out. "What if? What if we reversed the vote? What if we reinstated humanity's membership?" Admiral paused at the doorway. "It's too late for that. You've shown us who you really are. When you had power over us, you chose cruelty over cooperation. That's not something we can forget." She left the hall for the final time. Behind her, the representatives of 846 civilizations sat in the dark, beginning to understand that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Outside, human ships continued to disappear from the galaxy's shipping lanes, research facilities, and defense stations. The invisible empire that had held everything together was quietly packing up and going home. The galaxy was about to learn how to survive without the people they had scorned. 6 months had passed since humanity from galactic civilization. What had started as technical difficulties had become a complete catastrophe. Dr. Myra sat in her empty laboratory on the planet Prime. She was one of the galaxy's leading experts on infectious diseases, but today she felt helpless. Outside her window, she could see long lines of sick people waiting for medicine that didn't exist. The molecular assemblers that produced life-saving drugs had stopped working 3 months ago. Doctor's team had tried everything to fix them, but the technology was too complex. Without human maintenance, the machines had slowly broken down one by one. "Doctor," her assistant said quietly, "we lost another 50 patients today." Doctor closed her eyes. In the past 6 months, she had watched diseases that had been eliminated for centuries come roaring back. Her people were dying from illnesses that should have been easily cured. "Keep trying," she whispered, though she knew it was hopeless. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on thousands of worlds. The Trade Consortium had collapsed completely when their quantum mining drills stopped working. Without rare minerals from deep inside planets, Their economy had crumbled overnight. Billions of were now unemployed, and their government was struggling to provide basic food and shelter. Trade Minister had lost his fortune, his position, and his dignity. He now lived in a small apartment and worked at a basic manufacturing plant. Every day, he remembered how he had laughed at the humans and called them useless. The hegemonic alliance was facing even worse problems. Without their advanced weapon systems, their mighty fleet had become a collection of helpless metal boxes floating in space. Pirates, who had been kept in check by invisible human patrols for centuries, were now attacking merchant ships and civilian colonies with no fear of punishment. Admiral Orr had tried to fight back, but his ships couldn't even target enemy vessels properly. The proud military force that had once dominated half the galaxy was now too weak to protect its own home worlds. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "another colony has gone silent. That's the 15th one this month." Admiral Orr stared at the star map. Red markers showed worlds that had been attacked by pirates or had simply lost contact with the outside galaxy. The hyperspace relay network had completely collapsed, leaving most systems isolated and defenseless. "Send a message to all remaining ships," he ordered. "Return to home systems and defend what we can." It was a retreat. The mighty hegemonic alliance was giving up on controlling space and was now just trying to survive. But the worst crisis was on the Council station itself. The Crystal Syndicate had always prided itself on being the galaxy's information network. They stored data for millions of worlds and provided communication services to every major government. That network was now failing. Counselor Ara stood in her data center, watching screens go dark one by one. The quantum storage crystals that held the galaxy's knowledge were becoming corrupted without proper human-designed maintenance programs. "How much have we lost?" she asked her chief technician. 60% of our historical archives," the technician reported. 90% of our scientific databases, all of our star charts for the Outer Rim territories." Ara's crystalline body flickered with grief. Her people had spent thousands of years collecting knowledge from across the galaxy. Now it was all disappearing because they had been too proud to admit they needed human help. The worst moment came when the mining guild attempted to invade what they thought was a defenseless human colony. Fleet Commander had convinced his government that humans were weak and helpless without galactic support. He led 200 of their best warships to a system called 128, where intelligence suggested humans had a small mining operation. What they found was impossible. "Commander," his sensor officer reported, "I'm reading defensive platforms around the planet. Lots of them." "How many?" "I can't get an exact count, sir. They keep appearing and disappearing from our sensors." Commander looked out at what appeared to be empty space. His sensors showed nothing, but his instincts told him something was very wrong. "Fire a warning shot at the planet," he ordered. The laser blast never reached its target. Instead, it simply vanished about halfway to the planet, as if something had absorbed it completely. Then the space around his fleet began to change. Massive ships materialized out of nowhere, appearing as if they had been invisible the entire time. They were sleek, black vessels that looked like they were made from liquid metal. Commander had never seen anything like them. "Vessels," came a calm voice over the communication system, "you are trespassing in human space. Leave immediately or you will be destroyed." Commander tried to respond, but found that his communication systems weren't working. In fact, most of his ship systems were suddenly offline. The engines were dead. The weapons wouldn't fire. Even the life support was running on emergency power. "What's happening?" he shouted at his crew. Nobody could answer. Their instruments showed impossible readings. According to the sensors, the human ships were somehow reaching inside their vessels and shutting down individual systems with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, every ship in the fleet lost power. They didn't explode or burn. They just stopped working like machines that had been unplugged. Commander found himself drifting in space, completely helpless, while the mysterious human ship surrounded his fleet. "You have 10 minutes to abandon your vessels," the human voice said calmly. "We'll provide transport back to your territory. Your ships will be recycled for raw materials." Commander had no choice but to order his crew to evacuate. As they were loaded onto human transport ships, he got a close look at the human crew members. They weren't the primitive, backward people he had expected. These humans moved with quiet confidence and carried weapons that looked like they belonged in a fantasy story. Their ships were clean, efficient, and clearly centuries ahead of anything the galaxy's advanced civilizations had ever built. "How?" he whispered to one of the human officers. The officer, a young woman with short black hair, smiled sadly. "We tried to tell you, you wouldn't listen." When the survivors of the fleet returned home with news of their complete defeat, panic spread across the galaxy. If the humans could destroy 200 warships without firing a single shot, what else could they do? The answer came a week later when every government in the galaxy received the same message. It appeared simultaneously on communication systems that weren't even supposed to be working anymore. "To the civilizations of the galaxy," the message began. "We are Admiral Sarah of the Terran Defense Force. 6 months ago, you voted to remove humanity from the Galactic Council and reduce us to Protectorate status. We honored your decision by withdrawing our support." The message continued. "We have watched with sadness as your civilizations have struggled without our help. We have watched planets fall to disease, governments collapse from economic failure, and colonies disappear to pirate attacks. We have seen the knowledge and technology of lost because you could not maintain what we helped you build. We want you to understand that this was not revenge. This was consequence. Actions have results. Cruelty has a price." The message concluded. "We will not return to save you. We will not offer our help again unless you prove that you have truly learned from this experience. The galaxy is yours now. What you do with it is up to you." After that, there was only silence from human space. No communication, no contact, no sign that humanity even still existed. The galaxy that had once been proud and mighty was now broken and afraid. The species that had called humans primitive and useless were now struggling to survive without them. And in the depths of space, 3,000 human warships patrolled the borders of human territory, making sure that no one could threaten the peaceful worlds that had chosen cooperation over conquest. The age of consequences was far from over. 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared from galactic civilization. The once mighty Galactic Council now met in a small, poorly lit room aboard a failing station. Only 47 species were still able to attend the meetings. The rest had either collapsed entirely or were too busy fighting for survival to participate. High Counselor looked older and more tired than his species normally did. His once shining metal skin was now dull and scratched. The crown that had marked his high office was gone, sold for food during the worst part of the economic collapse. "We need to face the truth," he said quietly to the small gathering. "We made a mistake, the biggest mistake in galactic history." Around the room, former enemies sat next to each other in uncomfortable peace. The Trade Consortium and the Hegemonic Alliance, who had once competed for dominance, were now working together just to keep their remaining colonies alive. Doctor from the Medical Alliance raised her hand. She looked frail and sick. Without human medical technology, even the doctors were struggling to stay healthy. "My people are dying," she said simply. "We've lost 80% of our population to diseases we haven't seen in centuries. Our children are being born with conditions that we used to be able to prevent. We need help." "We all need help," Admiral Orr admitted. The proud military leader now commanded only 12 working ships, and even those were falling apart. "But the humans won't answer our messages. They won't even acknowledge that we exist." Former Trade Minister, who now served as a refugee coordinator, pulled out a data pad. "I've been studying the old records," he said, "trying to understand what we lost when the humans." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy 2 years ago with all the human-maintained systems working properly. Then the image changed to show the galaxy today. More than half the systems were dark. Trade routes had collapsed. Entire star systems had gone silent. "It's worse than we thought," continued. "The humans weren't just helping us. They were preventing disasters that we didn't even know about." He showed them images from the galactic archives. Hidden human fleets had stopped 3 different species from going to war with each other over the past century. Human diplomats had prevented dozens of genocides. Human scientists had quietly cured plagues before they could spread. "They were protecting us from ourselves," Counselor Ara said. Her crystal body flickered with shame. "And we repaid them by calling them useless and trying to make them slaves." The room fell silent. Everyone understood now what they had done. They had destroyed the very people who had been keeping them safe and prosperous for 200 years. Young ambassador from the Aquatic Federation stood up. She had only been in office for a few months after the previous ambassador died from a treatable illness. Maybe, she said carefully, we're approaching this wrong. We keep trying to contact them as governments, as the same people who betrayed them. What if we tried a different approach? What do you mean? Asked. What if we admitted we were wrong? What if we offered to give them what they should have had all along? The former council members looked at each other. It was a radical idea. No galactic government had ever admitted to being completely wrong before. But these weren't normal times. Over the next 6 months, the remaining civilizations worked together on something unprecedented, a formal apology. They called it the Terran Accords, and it offered humanity everything they should have had from the beginning. Complete membership in galactic government, veto power over major decisions, recognition as the technological and diplomatic backbone of galactic civilization. Most importantly, a guarantee that no species would ever again claim superiority over any other. They also included something else, a detailed history of everything that had gone wrong since humanity left, written by the people who had suffered through it. Every failed colony, every preventable death, every technology that had collapsed without human maintenance. It was a record of consequences that would serve as a reminder for future generations. When the Terran Accords were complete, they faced a problem. They had no way to contact humanity. Every human ship, station, and colony had simply vanished from known space. The solution came from an unexpected source. Young remembered something from her childhood, old stories about human colonies in the far reaches of space that had been written off as myths. Following these legends, a small group of volunteers set out in the last working starship the galaxy possessed. They traveled for months through dangerous space, past failed colonies and dead worlds, searching for any sign of humanity. They found it at the edge of the galaxy, in a system that didn't appear on any official star charts. What they discovered took their breath away. The human colonies weren't the small settlements they had expected. They were massive cities floating in space, connected by bridges of light that spanned between planets. Gardens grew in zero gravity. Children played in parks that orbited around artificial suns. It was beautiful beyond imagination, and it was protected by a defensive fleet that made the old hegemonic alliance look like toy boats in comparison. The human ships that approached their vessel were sleek and elegant, clearly built by a civilization that had moved far beyond the need for war. They were escorted to a space station that was larger than most moons. Ambassador was waiting for them. She looked exactly the same as she had 2 years ago, but she seemed calmer, more peaceful. You've traveled a long way, she said simply. Stepped forward. Her species lived underwater, and she had to wear a special suit to breathe, but she had insisted on making this journey personally. We came to apologize, she said, and to offer you something that should have been yours from the beginning. Listened carefully as explained the Terran Accords. She read through the detailed apology and the formal recognition of humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. When finished, was quiet for a long moment. You understand that this changes nothing, said finally. We can't undo the past 2 years. We can't bring back the people who died because of decisions your governments made. We know, said, but we can try to make sure it never happens again. Looked out through the station's windows at the thriving human civilization beyond. We've learned to live without the galaxy, she said. We're not sure we need your approval anymore. Maybe you don't need us, admitted. But we need you, not just for technology or protection. We need you to show us how to be better than we were. Over the following weeks, and the human leadership considered the offer. It wasn't an easy decision. Many humans had been hurt by the galaxy's betrayal and wanted nothing more to do with their former neighbors. But in the end, humanity chose hope over anger. The human response was simple. They would help, but slowly and carefully. They would return to assist with humanitarian crises, first preventing plagues, stopping wars, ensuring that people had food and medicine. Technology and military support would come later, if the galaxy proved it had truly learned from its mistakes. Most importantly, they established new rules. Any species that threatened or attacked another would lose human support permanently. Any government that claimed superiority over others would be cut off from human assistance. The galaxy would either learn to cooperate, or it would be left to face the consequences alone. The first human ships returned to galactic space 6 months later. They were medical vessels, carrying cures for the diseases that had been ravaging worlds since the humans left. They asked for nothing in return except a promise that the receiving worlds would help their neighbors when the time came. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to heal. The new Galactic Council met for the first time a year later. It was different from the old one. Instead of species competing for dominance, they worked together to solve problems. Instead of mocking those who seemed weak, they celebrated cooperation and mutual aid. Took her place at the head of the council table, not as a junior member begging for scraps, but as the recognized leader of the galaxy's most important civilization. But the thing that made everyone remember the cost of their mistakes was the memorial at the center of the council chamber. It listed the names of every person who had died during the 2 years humanity was gone. Billions of names from hundreds of species, all victims of the arrogance and cruelty that had torn the galaxy apart. At the bottom of the memorial were the words that had become the new motto of galactic civilization: strength through service, wisdom through humility. Children from across the galaxy came to study at the new Terran Academy of Galactic Cooperation, where they learned not just science and technology, but how to work together regardless of species or background. And in the deepest archives of the Academy, they kept detailed records of the 2 years of consequences, so that no future generation would forget what happened when cooperation was replaced by cruelty. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some lessons, once learned the hard way, are never forgotten. But even as civilization rebuilt itself on new principles of respect and cooperation, everyone knew that humanity was watching. The 3,000 ships of the Terran Defense Force still patrolled the edges of human space, a quiet reminder that the species that had once saved the galaxy from itself was now ready to protect itself from everyone else. Peace had returned to the galaxy, but it was a peace built on understanding, not fear. And for the first time in galactic history, it looked like it might actually last.